podcast 101 a primer de Huang. Está medio complicado. Así que bueno, recuerden también pasarse por el Q&A, van a poder dejar sus preguntas y luego la van a estar respondiendo. Vamos.
Hello, I'm Huang. Greetings from beautiful Greenville, North Carolina, and I hope that you are having a wonderful Nerdeala. I am going to talk a little bit today about podcasts. There are a lot of podcasts out there, and for tech podcasts specifically, it's really hard to figure out which ones are going to give you the most impact for learning for tech. And I'm here today to talk about some strategies that you can adopt so that you can get the most out of your tech podcasts. A little bit about me. I am a story editor for Command Line Heroes. That is a podcast by Red Hat that covers various topics in tech history. I worked on seasons 6 through 9. I'm also a writer and producer for Compiler, which is our show that we launched in August of last year. And on the side, I'm a professional creative. I work in content strategy, user experience, and podcasting. So a little bit about what we're going to cover today. So I know that podcasts are something that are wide and ranged and varied, but there's a couple of things that people can use to kind of get the most in their learning experience from audio. Audio can be a very powerful tool for learning, but it takes a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of work to get the most from them. So we're going to talk about some of those strategies today. We're going to set goals. We're going to learn how to set goals for studying via audio. We're going to learn how to identify podcasts based on their format, their style, and their presentation. Really useful podcasts to learn about tech, and we're going to together create kind of an action plan or a study plan using those kind of outside or external materials for those podcasts. So one thing you need to know about me is that I love audio. I love podcasts. I listen to them all the time. I listen to them when I wake up. I listen to them when I'm traveling, when I'm going about my day. I listen to podcasts for stories, for fictional stories, podcasts like Lore and Welcome to Night Vale. I also listen to podcasts to learn other languages, and I listen to them to kind of get different perspectives that you don't normally hear in the news cycle. So a few reasons why podcasts are absolutely great, right? And one of the big reasons, I think that you've already thought about this, but they're, for the most part, free. They're very accessible as far as price, and they're accessible from anywhere. As long as you have an internet connection, a set of headphones that work, and some kind of device, you can listen to them from anywhere, and you can listen to them virtually anywhere during any activity, whether you are working at your job, which I'm usually working at my job here in my home office. You can also listen to them while you're traveling on the bus or train or while you're driving. They can also have very, like I said, rare perspectives and rare voices that you just don't hear from when you're watching the news or you're listening or watching a movie, or you're listening to the news on the radio, for example. News reports can be very brief, but these podcasts kind of don't have that barrier, right? They can be long form. You can listen to people kind of in a conversational way, and you can hear stories that you wouldn't otherwise hear, right? And lastly, there's a podcast for everything. If you are into art, if you are into science, if you are into history or tech, there's a podcast for everything and every pursuit. But unfortunately, learning via audio can be very hard. So why is that exactly? Well, it's because for the most part, it's just audio. There's really no visuals. Maybe there's a couple of pictures here and there, but for the most part, podcasts are just all in your ears. You don't really see anything. And that can be a barrier in and of itself. But if you're listening to a podcast that, for example, is spoken in another language, maybe you are a non-native English speaker and you're listening to an English language podcast, that could be very difficult. Why? I know from my experience, when I listen to podcasts in other languages, there are some cultural things or some, maybe some quotes or some sayings or things that are very local, very kind of particular to that area. And I don't really understand them that well. Well, the same thing can be said of podcasts in English. It's very easy also to listen to podcasts kind of passively. You're not really, focused on them. You kind of have them playing in the background. Maybe you're cleaning your house. I know I clean my house a lot. I know that I cook a lot and I listen to podcasts while I'm cooking. I'm not really focused on what's being said. It's just kind of noise in the background. Lastly, podcasts, unlike an online class, for example, don't necessarily have a structured goal or intention. It's just something that a person just wanted to publish on the internet, or maybe it's someone who's doing an at-home podcast and it's very conversational. People talk about all kinds of topics. They meander, they don't stay on one topic, and it's very hard to get the worth of your time back. All that time spent, you're hearing about people talking about what they had for breakfast, for example, when you're really wanting to hear more about how they built their business, for example. But we do want to use podcasts to learn because they can be a very powerful tool. It's just hard to figure out where to start. So where do we start? So the one thing you want to do is set your goals, and you want to make your goals SMART. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. It's really hard to reach a goal if you don't know what complete or success looks like. So make sure you're set up for success. Make sure you have that image in your head. What do you want to do? What is your goal? You also want to look and listen for podcast style. Is it conversational? Is it more structured? Is it two people talking? Is there multiple people talking? Is it very easy to keep track of the conversation? Things like that. You also want to see if there's other materials like transcripts, blogs, news articles in the show notes, things on social media that you can use to kind of supplement what you're hearing on the show. If there's a website, which a lot of podcasts have a website associated with them, is there some kind of workbook or some kind of support group? Can you join it? Maybe there's PDFs or articles available that they have to share. Check them out. Make sure you have those kind of set aside in a document. And speaking of documents, make sure you have a system to keep it all straight. It doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be very complicated. It can be simple as having kind of all of these different podcasts set aside in one document, or even grouped together in your app if you're using an application to listen to your podcasts. So let's talk for a moment about that supplementation, the supplementing your audio. I like to call it companion content. This is material that you can use that you can supplement whatever you learned about that topic. So some of this can be found, like I said, in the show notes. Some of this can be found via a web search on your own. Sometimes the podcaster will upload their transcript online. Use the transcript, especially if you don't speak that language as your native language. Transcripts are very powerful, and we'll talk about them a little bit later. So like I said, the show notes in your podcast app are a really good source of information. There are usually links that you can click on to learn more about the topic. And lastly, if you're interested in a certain guest, check that guest's content in their channels, their social media content. You can check their website or their portfolio if they have one. They could have links to different videos or webinars or any other type of useful material that you can look at later after you listen to the show. And then it's really as simple as kind of bringing all those steps together. So you already have listened to your show, you've identified what the content is, what kind of style of the show it is. If it's just guest-based, if it has multiple guests, if it has multiple people that are not guests, they're hosts and they're coming together and they're talking from every week or every episode, you know what to expect. And then you can build those goals and build that content so that it agrees with the style and the format that you are expecting from that show. And this is a very powerful saying that I heard many times when I was a child. And it says, nothing says understanding better than saying what you learned in your own words. And that is from Betty J. Gilliam, who is one of my mentors and one of my personal heroes. And she's also my mom. So I know she won't see this, but hi, Mom. Another thing is you can use the podcast to kind of get to the podcaster themselves. You can engage with them. And trust me, as a podcaster, I can tell you, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from people who listen to our shows. We want to know, what they liked, what they didn't like. Ask us questions. Please go on social media and ask your favorite podcasters questions. Tag them in your social media posts. Get their attention. You want to, listen to what they have to say, but also you can create opportunities to kind of engage with them and then make the experience better for everyone. So one way you can, improve the experience of a show, going back to transcripts. If there's no transcript, I can tell you from experience, very difficult to get transcripts done for a podcast. You have to hire a service. If you don't have the money to hire a service, you have to do it yourself. And podcasters are very busy. They're already doing all the production work on the side. They're already writing episodes. It's very hard and daunting for them to make podcast transcripts. So if there's no transcript or there's no translation in your language, ask for one. And if they can't provide, you can maybe even contribute and make one. And through that experience, you can learn a little bit more about the topic. You can also ask hosts to do an AMA, kind of like a Reddit style AMA. They could do an Instagram live even, they can do a live stream. There are a lot of different formats for this out there, but basically you can ask for the podcasters or the podcast guests to kind of engage more directly with the audience. This is something that I'm telling you, podcasters want to get to know you. We want to know what you like. We want to know what you don't like. We want to know more about the people who are listening to what we make because it's important to us. And all of this benefits not just you, but the podcast itself. It can make the program better for everyone. So let's review a couple of things. Remember, you want to set the intention. You want to set goals. You want to make the listening an active experience. Don't just turn on the podcast and kind of have things going on in the background and you're, cleaning your house or doing dishes. Make the listening a more active experience and engage with the shows that you like. Once you make that plan, kind of with the supplementary materials, with the written materials, with the research and all the links, you can make the case or make the kind of lesson plan for yourself to learn more about that topic. And if you engage with the shows that you like, you'll keep motivated. It'll keep you going. And if things go slowly, if there are problems, if you still have a language barrier, for example, or you just find that the show is just not for you, don't be discouraged. You can always adjust your goals. You can find new shows. And you can most likely share that knowledge with others through social media or through your friend networks. So obviously, I worked on Command Line Heroes for quite some time. We also have Command Line Heroes in Espanol for the first couple of seasons we have available in Spanish. So you can listen to that right now. If you go to redhat.com/Command Line Heroes, you can listen to it either on your laptop or wherever you get your podcasts. It is available. As for me, you can find me on Compiler, which comes out on Thursdays every 2 weeks. And you can listen to what we have going on right now on our podcast. We have a season that is about the software stack, especially for those who are new to tech. It's a very robust and very exciting topic that we're covering there. You can also find me on Twitter at SteelballWong and IG, same thing, at SteelballWong. And I guess for now, that's it. I mean, I'm really looking forward to speaking with you all in the Q&A section. Until then, have a fantastic Nerdeala, and I will see you in audio. Bye.
Intelligence is the foundation of any good business. But if every good business has it, how do you stand out? Intuition. When enabled by technology, intuition stops feeling like a hunch and starts looking like confidence. The confidence you get when you work with Cognizant, where we engineer every aspect of your business, technology, processes, and experiences to anticipate expectations and act instantly. This is intuition, and we can engineer it.
Sí a potenciar tu talento en un lugar en constante transformación. Sí a trabajar con metodologías ágiles. Sí a vivir con mirada sustentable. Sí a oficinas en las que estamos conectados. Sí a una cultura de aprendizaje continuo. Sí a equipos con los mejores talentos. Sí a la innovación. Sí a divertirte con el mejor equipo. ¿Trabajar en ICBC? Sí. Vení a vivir la experiencia ICBC.
Bueno, estamos aquí de vuelta. Me presento, mi nombre es Andrea, ya tal vez me han visto en ediciones anteriores. Y vamos a hacer un Q&A con Kim Huang, que la tenemos aquí en vivo. Hi Kim, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm
Thank you for
good,
having
good.
me.
Very glad to have you here.
Awesome, thank you.
So we've got a couple of questions from the audience. So I'm going to start with the first one. Why
Sure.
do you think podcasts have become so popular?
I think it's because at first podcasting was not very accessible. You had to have a lot of very expensive equipment. I think the proliferation of different platforms, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, so the platforms that people can upload an RSS feed to, and then also different platforms and services to kind of make podcasting more accessible has kind of enabled kind of ordinary people to be able to make their own podcasts in their home. So without very much equipment, I have, for example, here I have my pop filter here. You can see on camera I have my very small microphone on my headphones. Without very much equipment, you can kind of make your own podcast at home without very much trouble. And I think that's why the medium has become so popular, because of the access now.
That sounds good. So, how do I choose a good podcast for learning purposes?
Great. Yes. This is an interest of mine, and this is kind of based on what my experience has been. I think looking at podcasts from kind of different characteristics. So what kind of podcast is it? First off, you have to kind of, as I said in the presentation, decide what you want to learn and make a goal. So I want to learn a new programming language. For example, I'm learning right now, I want to learn Python, and I also want to learn a little bit more about open source than I know now. Working for Red Hat, I want to know more. So I'm choosing podcasts that specifically talk about the types of languages I want to learn, and also the types of topics I want to learn. And then from there, you can kind of go to a second level of, is this a conversation between two people, or is it something that is just one person speaking, just to kind of get an idea of, if it's conversational, then you have to kind of approach it differently than if it's expository or a person just explaining things on their own. From there, I would look at the show and what kind of resources it has. Does it have a website, for example? Does it have a blog? Is there a blog associated? Does the person running the show have social media where I can ask them questions? So that's kind of how I break down, learning from a podcast, and how you can evaluate each podcast that you can find on Spotify or on your phone. You can use those types of characteristics to decide which ones are optimal for learning.
That's great information. So, how do you make an episode of Command Line Heroes? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, I can. Command Line Heroes is awesome. I'll go kind of high level. First, we all get together in a room, either physically or virtually. A lot of us are all over the country, all over the world actually, where our teams are kind of spread out in different countries even. So we all get together virtually, and we sit for very, very long meetings to kind of brainstorm what topic we want to cover, or what event or time period or type of technology we want to talk about. For example, we did a season about robots, and we came together and we said, what can we really say about robotics that would be interesting to our audience, and what kind of stories can we tell about where robotics have been, where they are now, and where they're going. So we get together for those meetings. We make kind of an outline of the season and what we want to talk about. And each episode we break into kind of parts. Each episode kind of has its own little subgenre or subject that's under robotics. One episode we did that I really liked was about robotic appendages. So like people who are getting, a robotic arm or a robotic hand, where that technology has been, where it is now, why has it changed, and where is it going to go in the future. So that's kind of a high level how we make each episode. And we get together, We do our research, we find interesting people to talk to, and we present kind of all that information in a big internal, pitch meeting. And we get the approval, and then we go off and start production. So that's kind of a high level of how we make command line heroes. There's more obviously involved, but that's from a very high level.
All right. Well, we're running out of time, so thank you so much for participating. I hope you had a great time.
I did.
And you can go to the next talks that we have. Thank
All
you
right,
so
absolutely.
much.
Thank you. All right.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bueno, y ahora vamos a una tanda y seguimos con el Track Nerd.
Vamos a nerdear.